I'm going to be taking a step beyond what Peter's described, insofar as I think companies are still trying to work out how the hell they fit within all this. I know Peter said you need to find your niche. And actually, I've got a small company and I don't know my niche either. And we've been doing Retrofit for just over 8 years now, and we think we're pretty good at it. And I still don't think there's a role for us in the Green Deal. And I wrote to all these guys about 18 months ago, fairly sizable organisations that represent over 100,000 small companies in the UK, and they felt their membership didn't know either. And potentially, the way the Green Deal was headed, they could potentially be frozen out unless they actually got their asses in gear and did something about it. So where I come from here is trying to design a way forward for small companies to make their own Green Deal, their Green Deal, rather than the ones, the Green Deal that's being offered effectively by the big companies that are out there. Now, I will explain why I've reached that conclusion. I won't just jump in and pitch something to you. But Nick's asked me to come along here because basically Nick's been taking part in, and Peter, with a number of workshops that we've been running over the last year or so now. I do recognise some other faces in the room as well, but people that have been talking to us about this stuff. But if I might quickly just explain the golden rule that Peter mentioned in one diagram. So you've got an energy bill, you do some work, the bill goes down, but you know, people don't do this because they love you, and they do it because they want to make some money, so that you have to charge you for doing the work. But the idea being that you do have some money left over. In other words, your total outgoings have gone down in spite of the charge being placed on the property and the bills having gone down. And that's great. You know, there's lots of worries about how the calculation's done and all that kind of stuff, but we're not here to talk about that today. I can answer questions afterwards if you want. But the reality is, if the golden rule is to be met, and you do want the entirety of your job to be paid for under the golden rule and the finance to be placed, then there's a limit on the amount of money that's available, because that gap has to be there, and or at least has to go to that line at the top there if you want the golden rule to be met. But the money's not free. There's a charge. 7% APR is what's being touted at the moment. It's a market mechanism. You know, lenders can charge what they like. But 7% APR over 25 years, using compound interest, is effectively doubling the money that's available at the start. So you've got half the money left to do work. Does that make sense? Now, administering this, some of the social landlords that are thinking about being Green Deal providers have estimated it will cost them about £1,500 just to do the administration of the Green Deal. Now, that's over 25 years. Now, divide that by 25, divided by 12, that's the monthly charge that will be added to your bill. It has to be added to the bill. Assessment costs. So, any DEAs in the room? Wow, blimey. Last week I did a presentation to 150 DEAs. This was entirely different. Okay. DEAs are trying to work out if they're going to become a Green Deal assessor, how they're going to get paid. Well, and there's a lot of worry about some of these big companies out there actually offering these assessments for free up front. I don't know what DEA... domestic energy assessor, somebody who does the energy performance certificates on sale or re-rental. The reality about the assessment cost is that someone's got to pay for it, and it'll be you if you're a homeowner. Okay, no matter whether you've had it free up front or somebody is, or you pay directly the DEA to do the work, then you're going to pay for it, and that gets lumped onto your charge. Now, even the government's own assessments assume that 1 in 3 assessments will go ahead and actually go ahead with the Green Deal package. If you're a Green Deal provider that's looking to go out there and just find your particular customer, then it might even be 1 in 5, 1 in 6. But what that means is that every 6th person that goes ahead will be paying for 6 other assessments that didn't go ahead with the Green Deal loan. Does that make sense? So that the people that are better at finding the customers that will go ahead without any monkeying around, the assessment, the administration costs are low because you're slick and your processes are good and you can get to the ground very quickly. You know, you're going to have the best offer in the market. And do you know what? If it's a really good quality offer and the risk of default is low, and you can make sure people actually save energy and that red bit on the bottom doesn't go up and all your money ends up being above the black line, then you're going to have the best offer in the market. My view is that some of the really big top-heavy companies out there that can offer the Green Deal are not going to be very good at that, especially in the first couple of years, and they'll be very much more expensive. My contention is that small companies working collaboratively without the overheads actually could be much better at this than the big companies that are out there, be cheaper and they have a better value for money than for the homeowners that are out there. But we have to sort ourselves out to do that. The big implications for small companies in the Green Deal are that, yeah, great, okay, there's an opportunity here. The market size is going to get bigger. We're now looking at whole house solutions. Traditionally, the way we've retrofitted buildings over the last few years is actually, let's have a campaign of 3 or 4 things that we put leaflets through the doors about, loft insulation, cavity wall insulation, PV, and everyone is specialist at their thing. Buy my thing, or I can't do anything else for you, governor. And you go on and find someone else to do something different. But what about the interfaces between these things? What about the insulation that's been pulled out of the way so you can rewire the house and not been put back again? All those kind of things make the whole house actually not necessarily as good as it could be, because we're only doing our niche. Whole house solutions actually, where we need to get to by 2050 is virtually everything you could think about possibly doing in a home has to be done by 2050. So whole house is where we need to be thinking. So working collaboratively with other specialists is the only answer for getting the energy consumption down to where it needs to be for every homeowner. The Green Deal is introducing some complexity, and there's a reasonable amount of bureaucracy involved. And we have to have a handle on that. So that's an issue for small companies, especially small companies like mine who tend to price jobs up in the middle of the evening because you haven't got any time during the day. This is kind of stuff that you really want to be eradicating. The role of the provider, this new Green Deal provider, it's a powerful entrant to the market now. Some new people into this place now that haven't really been here before. B&Q are already offering loft extensions to people. What does this mean for small companies? And they're going to have bigger competitive advantage. They can bulk buy materials. Wolseley Group are going to become a Green Deal provider because they want you to buy their product, not because they want to put their arm around a homeowner and say everything's going to be all right. And I'll add one onto that list. B&Q offer a Green Deal assessment to a homeowner that's about to go ahead with Joe Soap, the kitchen installer. Well, Joe is 99% sure that he's going to go ahead with that kitchen job. B&Q have done a free assessment. They've gone along and they said, put internal wall insulation before you put the kitchen in, Mrs. Jones. By the way, we do kitchens. There's an opportunity here for the market to get bigger, but actually there's a massive threat here for small companies. If they don't get their act together, that they're going to get their existing work that you think you're going to have forever eaten into by the big boys, because actually they've got an earlier in and they can add finance to it now as well. I like diagrams. This is just elaborating on what Peter said. One particular of the classic model, if you like, that's out there, the Green Deal provider that really doesn't do much. They coordinate everything, they organise the loan, they get an assessment done, and they'll work with large contractors. Carillion have said that they will be using small contractors. Their model, genuinely though, is that they will find larger regional contractors that they will subcontract to, and they in turn will subcontract to a small contractor, and possibly and on and on. Every time you add a tier of subcontract into this piece, you add a layer of profit which gets taken away from the money that's available for a homeowner. That is not good value for a homeowner. And where's the small company? What's at the tail end? In a framework contract, being told what they're going to be paid. The other model, the big boys, everything in-house, except probably the loan. And now and again there might be specialist installers out there that will do certain aspects. You might get a specialist nationwide external wall insulation contractor, for instance, that might get all of their work. And I put impartial assessor in brackets there for a good reason, and I'll come on to that shortly. So here's my view on retrofit. It's circular. All the things we need to do before 2050 in a home will have to be done. Whether we do it voluntarily now and we use a finance mechanism to do it, or we'll be bashed over the head until we do it. But it can't be done in one hit. My own home I renovated, I had to move out for a year to do it. Now, not everyone's going to do that. Very rarely will people want to do that. We can't afford to. We have to do it in bite-sized chunks. Now, it's all very well having a plan and having an assessment, but as an installation contractor or a retrofit coordinator, project manager, you're going to need to maintain a relationship with the homeowner, maybe over 3 substantial visits over the next few years. So that's no longer give a quote to Mrs. Jones, she gives you the order, you do the work, hopefully she pays you very quickly and you bugger off and you never see her again because you haven't priced in for sorting out the defects. This is ongoing relationship stuff now. You have to give her a plan, do the work, measure, make sure you've actually saved her some energy. Has she been satisfied with the work? And that does actually flow through to training. We have to be competent people now. We have to have updates. All the mistakes that we collectively make need to feed around to the other people that are working with you. Hopefully you've put the plan in after an architect has given you a design for loft extension and a new layout, not after. What's the point? The finance is now coming into the piece as well. We've got an energy audit now which is directing the homeowner to say these are the things that are appropriate for you in your home. But you can't give that to a builder and say, there you go, install that, because that's not a specification. So the specification gets turned into products, manufactured items, that kind of stuff that suit that home. The contractor's doing the work, and we're under the Green Deal, every person will be signing off their own work. The certification body will be making sure that the quality is high by doing vigilant visits and that kind of stuff. But I would contend there's an interesting angle on this here. The left-hand side of that line, you've got people that are doing it for the homeowner. The right-hand side of that line, you've got people doing it because they want to flog you something and do it because that's what they do best and that's what they've always done. Even a plumbing contractor who's been trained by Worcester Bosch and only by Worcester Bosch will be saying to Mrs. Jones, well, Mrs. Jones, I think you should have a Worcester Bosch boiler because they're really good. Well, he would say that, wouldn't he? That's not impartial, is it? That's a biased position, and you could take that from most contractors that are out there. An external wall insulation contractor trained up by Stowe and no one else. That's their job. They will recommend Stowe. If we're going to build up the trust that's needed to get homeowners over the line and actually get going, not just with Green Deal, but with Retrofit, because there's loads of barriers to this stuff, then we've got to build trust between ourselves and the industry. We've got to tell people what side of that line we're on. Now, British Gas, B&Q, other sorts of guys, if they're doing everything in-house, they're doing all those things on that diagram. They're going to be standing either side of that line. At one moment, they're going to be telling Mrs. Jones all the best things that are out there for them to do, and then 5 minutes later, they're going to say, by the way, this is how much I'm going to charge you for it. And how do we know they've not inflated the job simply because they want to get the turnover up? Every function on that diagram can be delivered by small companies. Some people might want to do one or two, but rarely would you step either side of that line, I would say. So I think there's a massive opportunity here, not just because there's this threat from big companies coming to nick our work. I actually think people will prefer to buy from a model made up of small companies doing all those little bits individually because they trust it. So I've been running some workshops now with now over 200 companies. We've sat in a room together, and I've been asking them these questions. After explaining a bit about what Peter's talked about and a bit about the reality from my point of view about the Green Deal, where do small companies feel they fit within it? And then what do they think the barriers to entry are in getting into that particular market? And then there's some ideas. And I'm just going to bung these up here just so that you've got an idea of the sort of things that have been coming back from small companies. And hopefully these chime with you. If there's any missing, tell me at the end. How do they fit before they fit? Well, end of the supply chain, which is a shame because actually they're there first. Small companies tend to be already speaking to Mr. Jones about the kitchen or loft extension or new boiler or rewiring. They're the perfect opportunity to do retrofit because you've already mucked the house up, you've already mobilised, you've already stripped the floor out or whatever. It's the cheapest moment in the life of the building to do some of these things. But why would you pass that lead on to a Green Deal provider that might take some of that work away from you? Traditional procurement routes might not suit in this situation because if it's a framework contract, because a Green Deal provider does not want to sign 250, 300 contracts every week just to get all those volumes of contracts going. You know, these are framework contracts. Your price will be given in advance and maybe fixed for a couple of years. But what we're seeing here is an interesting move now. Any PV installers in here will be acutely aware of the fact that feed-in tariff is not fully paid unless you've got at least an E rating now. So, you know, PV installers being quite innovative now, making sure they're doing loft insulation, cavity wall insulation at the same time. Or if they don't do it, get a mate in who can, so that the full feed-in tariff can be claimed. That's the way we need to be moving, but not just in the narrow field of PV. So what are the barriers to entry? A small company, it's very difficult maintaining leads, and you know, it's complex as well. How do you explain this to a homeowner if we don't really get it ourselves? New skills training. How do you justify investment in new skills and training when you don't know what the market is? And actually, if that market is being completely dictated to you by a large company, is that something you really want to buy into? And actually, even if you're on a framework contract, you're not guaranteed any work. Marketing costs. Liabilities flowing downhill as they tend to do. And here's an interesting one. The lender under the Green Deal will only pay out when the job's finished, certificates are in place, and all the feedback has been given by the homeowner. Now, that could be 4 months after you've started the work. Now, I don't know about you, but that's not a market I want to be in because I'd have gone bust by then. There's a cash flow risk here. And none of the Green Deal providers that I've spoken to are intending letting any money out until the lenders lend money out, because they want volume. Broad ideas for getting into this. We need to get to some scale. If we're going to collaborate, we need to get scale quickly. There's no point in 10 or 15 little companies getting together in parts of the country unless there is the opportunity to get to scale very quickly, because we need to be heard in the marketplace. Green Deal providers don't want to speak to just 15 people in Lincoln. They want to speak to a whole bunch of people in the region. So unless we can get to scale quickly, there's really no point. It's got to be a good brand. It's got to be high quality. There's got to be an element of face-to-face here. I mean, this came clear to me when I ran a session at the RIBA. And architects are not alone in the fact that they actually help the homeowner understand what the hell they want. Homeowners you normally invite an architect around and say, well, I'd like my house to be a bit better, please. And an architect's got to work out what that means. And you know what? Even if you've got you want to put a new kitchen in, you invite your builder around, your builder, kitchen fitter, or even your plumber's going to have to work with the homeowner to tease out exactly what they want out of their property. We're designers now. We're advisors. We need to have the right skill sets and the knowledge to be able to do that properly. And that puts them in a great place to be able to get the Green Deal going, or just wider retrofit going. Maintaining independence in the market is crucial. For that reason, the circular diagram, making sure that we're building that trust up. So there was some thinking about trade associations themselves becoming Green Deal providers, but actually that's seen to be a massive conflict. And by the way, it's a massive risk becoming a Green Deal provider. 25-year contract, but it does need this critical mass, and that's why I've been going around the country doing talks like this. So, in my view, and the view of the 200 or so companies that have been part of these workshops now, we need some kind of collaboration, or what we've called it is a conduit between a Green Deal provider. You have to have a contract between a Green Deal provider and a homeowner. That's the law. That's part of the scheme. A Green Deal provider's got to be there. Homeowners want more than just the high street brands. They want a choice, for all the reasons I've outlined. We're already there. We're already advising. Why can't we just add to our offer? And actually, I don't think the Green Deal will fly without the presence of significant amounts of small companies, because we already do most of this stuff. And there's this notion of protecting our existing market, which I think is very real. So we looked at three options. One, become a marketing agency in effect, big brand, leaflet drop, buy the customers, sell them onto a Green Deal provider on the pretext that they will only use small companies. Well, we didn't feel there was enough teeth to that model. And by the way, it costs quite a lot of money to get a marketing agency up and running, especially when you're competing with £75 million annual spend from B&Q on marketing. Second option, become a Green Deal provider. Well, from a standing start, that's mental. So we got rid of that one straight away. The final one was, well, why don't we just act in a way as a main contractor? Put framework contracts in place that we own between ourselves, so that we can then present ourselves to the larger guys, the Green Deal providers out there, as people that can be their supply chain. And that's what we've been working on. So the idea being, that would only work if there's a clear and consistent route to work. If there needs to be some kind of framework, it needs to not only attract homeowners and Green Deal providers, but it needs to attract its membership. And unless you can show small companies the money, they're not going to come. A recognisable brand that they would be willing to put on their own marketing. So in other words, any of you guys here who are putting out marketing locally, you would be happy to be associated with this collaborative brand on the same page. Support to members in a number of ways, and I'll explain more about that later. But making sure that there's an entry requirement, and make sure that the people entering are high quality, they're doing the right thing, they're trained, they're certified, maybe even to a higher level than the Green Deal, without it costing huge amounts of money. Interacts with collaboration of other industry, other initiatives that there are around, and there are some cooperatives that are dotted around the country right now, and we would seek to represent those as well. We shouldn't shut those guys out. But really importantly, this is about retrofit. This isn't just about the Green Deal. I know Peter said that the Green Deal is the only game in town. Well, it is in terms of getting finance up front, making sure that long paybacks are dealt with, and driving a reasonable amount of volume. But actually, there's plenty of people that don't need the Green Deal finance. And if you just become a Green Deal provider and a Green Deal installer, then maybe you're going to be focusing on those and not outside of that stuff as well. So what's the model? Well, the classic model is the customer has walked into B&Q. B&Q say, oh, we've got a load of customers now. We need a supply chain. So this collaborative effort could present itself as that supply chain. But two parts. Assessors on one side, independent and impartial. On the right-hand side, you've got the installers. And they don't cross over. But there's pre-pricing, of course. There's a framework contract. And we're offering ourselves up as the people that could do the work for a Green Deal provider. A Green Deal provider, once the work's finished, will let the money out. But here's the cool bit. Actually, we're already there. We're talking to people about loft extensions. We're going to be putting a new boiler in. We're going to be redoing the garden and putting external wall insulation up at the same time, or something. And provided we trust the model, we could go to a Green Deal provider and say, come on in, Sainsbury's, we've got 50 customers a week. What are you going to give us? And if they don't give us a good offer, we go to Tesco's, or we go to Wilmot Dixon, or we go to whoever. But it means we're in charge of our own destiny. And by the way, I think we're going to have much better access to customers. I remember I mentioned about the fact that, perhaps even 1 in 6 customers will go ahead after they have a Green Deal assessment. Well, if we're already there, we're talking to Mrs. Jones about a loft extension, we'll pretty much know within the first sort of couple of days of our job whether she wants any extra stuff. Will the first floor be insulated as well? Whilst we're mucking up your entire hallway because we're taking all this stuff up the stairs for you, Mrs. Jones, why don't we insulate the internal walls for you? And by the way, we can get it paid for. But you can do it without introducing somebody who's going to nick the loft extension. The cool thing is we don't necessarily even need the Green Deal provider, and we might not even need the loan. If we've got the framework in place, we can actually work with people locally to fill the gaps of the stuff that we don't do ourselves. We could actually start to deliver this using completely different finance. Maybe the homeowner is wise enough to realise that if they extend their mortgage, that's 2.5–3% APR, not 7%. It's not going to take long, is it? But what would it do? There's a lot of man-marking in the functions here. So contract administration, project management, the marketing stuff, certification, organising that stuff. These guys, the Green Deal providers don't want to do that. That £1,500 over the life of individual house, that's something that they don't really want to take on, but they've got to do it. Small companies don't want to deal with that stuff either, really. These are all things that you have to do at 5 o'clock when you get home. If there's a mechanism to allow those things to be done, if in effect sort of an online framework that enables a Green Deal provider to log on and see that the small company's done their thing, and it's administered centrally, then again, that's going to be something that's going to draw in both sides, and that's what we've been working on. In fact, if we were to start tomorrow, I've already got somebody who's built that and we can use. So what's been decided, if you like? I've written a business plan. It's been signed off by those 15 trade associations on the back of all the workshops that I've been running. The model is as a cooperative. So small companies would be shareholders, in effect, of this model, with 3 types. First, the industry groups, they'll be setting the standard, the governance, making sure that what the entry requirements are, and how we kick people out that are rubbish. Lead finders, so these will be local authorities, small community groups, maybe even estate agents. The sort of people that actually, they don't want to do anything necessarily other than shape the offer. And community groups and local authorities are very keen on that. They want to make sure that people within their district are not being sold a pup, but they want to be able to have the ability to be able to shape the offer. And finally, practitioners, the assessors, the installers, the people that do the work. And they'll be the majority of the membership, of course. The idea is that this body, this conduit, will be not for profit. It's there to exist to maximise the profit for its members. The lead finders, by the way, will be paid for their leads. So there's another reason for them to be there. Calculations I've done with Haringey Council in the last couple of weeks have shown that based on the volumes that they predicted, which are slightly exaggerated, I have to say, they reckon they can generate £100,000 for 1 member of staff just sitting there, just driving leads into this not-for-profit cooperative. So that's enough for a salary and a lot of marketing, just paid for by the fact we're doing work for them. I've assumed at the moment assessments will be paid for up front by the homeowner, and we give them a refund if they go ahead with the Green Deal. Because actually, there's a way around that. If you are already there doing a loft extension, you've got a £40,000 job or whatever, and you see the opportunity for a bit of extra work, well, I'll pay the 150 quid for an assessment. Why the hell not? So, software machinery, pre-pricing of the works, automated tendering to an extent. So you can change your price at any moment. You're not tied in for any period of time at all. So I hope there's a nice sort of middle ground there for it, being a framework, but not being something that stifles. Recording of progress and completion. That sort of thing can get things moving very, very quickly. The idea being that we can actually start to get the payments through much more quickly if we're recording very effectively. I'll whiz through this because I'm over time already. Key issues to be resolved. The idea being that the conduit has to pay for itself, purely and simply. Any money that's left at the end of a year, the members can vote to have it taken back to them. It's their money, it's their profit. But we're asking people to pay up front to be a member first of all, but there's no annual charge. The idea being it charges for every piece of work that goes through it. Leads are paid 50 quid only if it goes ahead as a Green Deal provider, as a Green Deal package. And access to quotation fee. In other words, the homeowner has chosen you, you pay £25 to be able to give them the opportunity to actually go ahead with that quote. But you haven't had to find them, you haven't had to drive an hour across Lincolnshire to go and see them to work out they're a time waster, none of that stuff. Tier 2 members, the idea, but they would be like a community group or a local authority. They'd pay a small amount of money to have their own sub-website so that they can actually do their own marketing. They can choose which people are on there. So Bath City Council, I've been speaking to those guys, they would only want to display within Bath the people that have been on their half-day training course on how to retrofit a Bath stone building, because they deal most of their time with people that are going around buggering up Bath stone buildings. So the idea is that there's a local offer here as well as a local supply chain, and it can be shaped how everybody wants to do it. Just to show you, I have actually put some numbers into this. The idea being after year 5, we've got around about 4,200 members, and this is a conservative estimate. You can have wild and wacky if you want, but nobody believes it. And based on the fact that these guys that I'm talking to are representing 100,000 members here, assuming 4,200 after year 5 is really pretty conservative in my view. The idea being that actually we're generating £74 million worth of work for its members by the end of year 5. And this is only assuming about 2 jobs per member per year. And there are some people in that 4,200 will purely be just doing this kind of work. So maybe they'll have 50 jobs a year. And others, maybe they won't put any. But the key thing here is that after year 3, you would have paid for your 400 quid upfront membership straight away. So what would you get back? Well, you get 2 years' worth of access to work. So what's got to be resolved? Well, I need to get some money to get this going, and I've got an interview next week for 1.2 million quid from government. It being a not-for-profit organisation, I think that's probably, well, I would say this, but I think they'd be mad not to give it to us. Actually, there's lots of opportunities for local trials straight away, and there's some money we're bidding for with local authorities around the country now to actually do little bite-sized chunks of trials. If you guys are interested in that, then do let me know. Engaging with Green Deal providers. They might have signed up, but they still haven't finished their business plans, so it's very difficult for them to sign up to anything at the moment. But don't forget the fact that we don't necessarily need Green Deal providers if the client doesn't need Green Deal finance. Trying to work out still where the liabilities are, so what the contracts are, it's still not there. Green Deal providers haven't been open about that stuff yet. But the key thing here is that we need to looking into the detail. These workshops that I'll be spending time with people like you once we've got the model presented, well, we have presented it here, is to give us the feedback. There's no point in designing this stuff if nobody wants to sign up to it. And I would urge you to get in contact with there's a website coming up very shortly where I will send, if you put your details in, I'll send you the business plan. It's literally about sort of 10 minutes worth of reading. The key figures, and I need your feedback on it. Because if I can't get it right, then we haven't got a model to fight the large corporates. The name, it's rubbish. So we need to come up with something. And one of the really interesting things about this, and there's something that's getting local authorities really interested, is that we believe that we've got the ability to employ apprentices directly. Small companies really would like apprentices on their books but can't afford them. We can employ them centrally, and we can second them for short periods of time to small companies around the place so they can get their full experience, work with the college, get their full qualifications. Suddenly you've got a whole new bunch of people out there. So I've already covered this really. So there's the website and there's the email address. Please, it'll take you no more than 15 minutes of your time to give me some feedback, but it's absolutely essential. If I don't get it, then I'm designing something that's just completely pointless and I've wasted 18 months of my life. And all I really need is your feedback. And we're considering actually publishing the full business plan actually because it's open source. It's meant to be completely transparent. We're trying to build the trust. If you want the full business plan, just drop me an email. I'll send it to you. Okay.